Oh, you like my outfit? Thank you, thank you. Yes. You know how aliens keep their trousers up, right? Asteroid belts. Yeah. You guys here on Earth sure do dress funny, though. You know, we aliens, we have an app that tells us which planets are the best to go check out. Unfortunately for Earth, it's only got 1 star. Yeah, no, not exactly a hot spot. But have you heard about the restaurant on the moon? The food's great, but there's no atmosphere. I like eating at restaurants alone, actually. I just bring a good book. And so I've been doing quite a bit of reading lately, and I'm really into this anti-gravity book. Yeah, I couldn't put it down. All right, y'all have been great, but I really need some space. Today, we're talking about taking up space with our weird, quirky selves. Speaking of weirdos,
we
Jeff.
have Mercedes. Oh, me?
Jeff.
How you doing? Yeah, I'm pretty weird. What can we do today?
What do you want to do today?
Okay. All right.
What do you want to get
I want to talk about
today?
you. I want to talk about Mercedes. And I know a lot of us know a lot about you, some more than others, things like that. But I think a lot of people really don't maybe know that much about you. And one of the things I want to, I don't want to do the history of Mercedes. I don't necessarily need to know that. But let's start off by talking about kind of modeling, okay? And let me start with this. How did you get into modeling?
Oh, I got into modeling I was actually at a nightclub. Someone took a random picture, as people do in nightclubs, which apparently got given to or shown to someone who needed a model for their exhibit at a car show. Or actually, it was a drift race at the time. And so that kind of entered me. So then I showed up, obviously, for that job. And that person who actually hired me became my manager. And it was him and his wife, actually. And they both, took parts in managing my modeling career from the beginning for several years, and they were amazing, amazing people. Shout out to Stan and Chelsea. And they, right off the bat, actually, at that first car show or drift show, I got a picture taken of me. Someone came around, we took some pictures in front of this exhibit with these cars, and that person, I believe, was the photographer for Import Tuner magazine, which was a big tuner magazine back in the days when magazines were a thing.
That was actually really well. I'm not a big Import Tuner guy, but it was really well done.
Yeah, and so he asked me to shoot the cover. So shooting the cover of Import Tuner, I think, was like my first real photo shoot ever, which is kind of funny. And then from there, I got asked to do like every cover in the import scene, and then eventually the car scene. It expanded to other
And where
places.
was this? This was in California?
Yeah.
Okay. And how old were you when you first...
the drift show was in Irwindale, if anyone's familiar with Irwindale's track. It's a very famous drift track. I don't know what it is.
Is it still there? Or is it still... How old were you when you got into that?
I think I was 20 or 21.
Okay, so last week. So you've been a model for a week now.
A week.
So as far as, so you get into the kind of the car scene, as it were. Was it primarily imports and...
At the beginning, yeah.
At the beginning, and then, but it stayed in motorsports for a while,
yeah,
right?
for a long time. I kind of traversed around the world of extreme sports, I'd say, and motorsports have a big part of that. So MotoGP, Supercross, I was Miss Supercross for several years, and I had these interesting titles like Miss Import Show Off. So like in my very beginning of my career, I would wear this little... it's a geisha inspired dress, like a very Japanese style dress, and I toured all around Canada and the U.S. to go to these shows, these car shows, and be essentially literally a trophy girl.
And you're getting paid this whole time. Obviously, you're making this is your primary income source from this.
Yeah, well, at the time, let's see, when I first entered modeling, I think at that time I was a mortgage broker.
It's so awesome.
And then I've had so many jobs. Like from the time I was 15, I started working, and before that, technically I was working for my parents' companies, but that doesn't really count when it's for your parents. And so then when I was 15, I got 2 jobs. I got one at a flower shop And then I got another one at the mall at this place called Styles for Less.
Styles for Less. Did you? Okay. And that's so, probably where, is that where you learn to be able to
be a workaholic? And I think that's where I learned that. First of all, I didn't learn it there. I knew I needed to make my own money because I did not like the household I was living in growing up. Okay. And I knew I needed to get some power in my own hands so I could make a move. And so when I was 17, I moved out into my own place. And
where'd you go to high school, or what area were you in high school?
Also in Orange County.
And I know I'm kind of backing up a little bit, but let's talk about high school real quick. Cause I do know a young man, and it's not who we would think it is, who is watching these episodes. Mm-hmm. And he's in high school, and good looking kid. Mm-hmm. And I'm really good friends with his mom. I'm going
to stand up, this please. Outfit might make a lot of noise. So just sorry.
Can you demonstrate for the people just listening only, because when you see it, you know what we're talking about. Can you demonstrate? Yeah. Can you do a little bit of it?
I'm in an all silver outfit if you're not watching the video. And I look like I just landed on this planet.
From what planet?
Well, I was going to say Venus, but I feel like that's
so lame.
Uranus is much better, but Uranus is a planet now. I don't know what we're...
Uranus is, Pluto's not, but what other,
somewhere out there. I'm probably in another galaxy is where I've come from. But anyway.
Because we got some fun with this. Please derail. I have my glasses here. I don't wear glasses. They're going down here now. So high school, let me ask you this. In high school, did you go to some college?
No. I did go actually for... one day to college.
So you were too smart for college, okay.
I went through all of going to it was a junior college. Okay. And I went to one day of college. I had a new boyfriend at the time. Showed up. My ex-boyfriend was there. That was my high school sweetheart throughout high school. And he was there going to college. And my new boyfriend was also going to go to college as well. Apparently, when I went to class, or my first class, they got in a scuffle.
Oh, boy.
And so when I came out of there, and this was a very narcissistic relationship, not the only person I dated probably that I would say has probably, is on the scale of narcissistic personality disorder. Okay. Unfortunately, not the only person. Didn't learn my lesson, I guess, on that one. Well. But anyways, so when I came out of that, and I was in a very different person at the time, but he was like, yeah, we can't come back here because, this is going to be an issue. And so I didn't.
Okay, wow.
Anyway.
So now let me ask you this. In high school, because the perception would be, I think, that common sense would say that you were very pretty and beautiful and popular in high school. Was that the case? Because I don't know.
Well, in high school, I didn't have to use that much because my boyfriend went to a different school. Okay. He went to an all men's Catholic school or whatever.
So you were kind of solo at this high school. Was it a co-ed high school that you went to?
A co-ed high school, public school.
Were you, did you get, were you?
Yeah, I was definitely cute, but I had a 4.0 in high school. School was really easy for me, but being popular was very important for me. It was always very, I knew I needed to build a tribe or something like that. And I was really focused on that. And so I was the girl who would figure out how to throw parties at people's houses when they were going, and I was figuring out how to make money by buying a keg somehow illegally, and everybody, charging everybody at the door.
Wow.
So I was an entrepreneur from the beginning. My dad always tells this story of when I was I think 5 or 6, and my little sister was 3 or 4, if that's the case. She's a year younger than me. And I always thought of myself as a little artist, so I would draw a lot and whatever. And I colored with crayons these pieces of just white construction paper into American flags, and then I glued sticks onto them they're little flags, And then I took my little sister, I don't know where my parents are, for God's sake, where are my parents? And walked the neighborhood, knocking on doors to sell these, and we're 5 and 6. That's a really young child.
That's really, really young. It's almost now arrestable at this point.
It's definitely arrestable, when I think back on it. Yeah. But anyway, so I walk door to door, and, they answer the door, and they're like, can we help you? Yeah. And there I am selling my American flags. It's probably near 4th of July or whatever reason I thought that was a good idea.
Well, it was a good idea.
I sold out. And I said,
sorry, I'm sold out. Do you remember what you were selling these for? Or do you remember what it is? Because it's
to make money.
Yeah, but no, I mean, how much? Do you remember how much?
Oh, 50 cents.
And how much did it cost you to make them, you think?
Well,
who cares? It was your parents.
It was someone else's money.
Perfect. Yeah. You are a true capitalist. Nice work. Okay, so let's, because
anyway,
we can.
Sorry, derailed us from high school.
No, it was a good derail.
Yeah.
So in high school, let's talk about the boys in high school. Because I wouldn't use college, but college isn't the best example because there's no popularity contest.
I was kind of like this party girl that had really good grades, but also sometimes cheated off of people when I was partying too much.
Okay.
That also had good,
So you're very practical. How about that?
I had to try and balance these things. But like, my mind wasn't an issue. I could figure things out.
Yeah.
But my mind was an issue when it came to getting twisted up with my sex hormones when it came to boys. And, so that was popularity. That's another thing I would say is kind of sex hormone based, where you're just wanting to be accepted and
do you feel that was you, like wanting to be accepted? So it was, but it sounded like popularity, at least initially when you were talking, your popularity felt a little more practical because you were building your tribe, whereas there was kind of neutral whether or not I was popular back in high school, so I can't really speak to it. But whereas I guess my thought of the popular person, the popular girl was more about me, but it doesn't sound like that's what you were doing. You were just doing it more from just a practical standpoint of surrounding yourself with people that were like you.
No, I was doing it fully from a safety standpoint of like needing to I didn't know at the time,
Right, but you look back and
Yeah, I wasn't conscious of it at the time, but it was me trying to make sure I have people around me because I knew I needed to have places to turn. I ended up, even though I moved out at 17, I lived essentially from, well, basically when I moved into this house that I didn't like being in, probably around, I don't know, I want to say like 9 years old, 10 years old, something like that. Yeah, at least maybe 8, 9, something like that. I would almost live at my, luckily, next door neighbor. Our backyards were actually connected, so I don't know if you call it a next door neighbor because we had a big backyard, but I lived at her house. I mean, I almost never came home. And then when I got old enough to have a boyfriend, I lived at his house and almost never came home except for to like change out my to-go bag of clothes.
And what age was this again? Sorry.
So probably from like, I don't know, I want to say like 8 or 9.
Wow.
9 or 10. All the way until I had a boyfriend, which was, I think I got a boyfriend at 14, 15.
So the independence I'm seeing, I'm starting to see where your not mastery, but ability to help yourself or deal with yourself kind of started at these younger. Well, it goes back to you ripping people off with the flags, but I mean, it's definitely.
It was not ripping them off. That's a deal.
It was a good deal. It was just subsidized.
That's a deal.
It was government subsidized. Well, it wasn't government. So it was subsidized by somebody.
I was using my cute looks to persuade them,
but that's okay.
Which is still happening.
Totally fine. We still do it. We're doing it right now. No, we're still doing it. And I'm so glad because I didn't know a lot of this about me. I kind of thought I did, but maybe I didn't. So let's talk. You now move on because we could stay on the high school thing, which I think is really interesting. But I guess the point there is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm receiving the point is, I know you will, but what I'm receiving the point is that you weren't popular for maybe the perceived notions that you were just some stuck-up girl. It was really because you had a desire that you needed a need met, and you built this kind of little community, or you wanted to be part of this community that just happens to be a little more popular.
Yeah, no, I was always like, more obviously to myself afraid. Like I think a lot of people don't realize their fear, but I think I had really realized my fear in high school when we're talking about caring about popularity. That's, when that kind of comes online. I think that came online for me through middle school, but it was probably because I had an existential crisis, like a real dark night of the soul when I was 11 that really started me
Can you
thinking.
tell us what happened there? Or you feel
Yeah, sure. I was in my bunk bed. And I as one does when
who was the poster of?
Oh, I didn't have a poster, but I did have like the closest thing you could call to a crush, but I wasn't really there yet, I guess.
Other than me, who was it? Yeah.
It was Jonathan Taylor Thomas. Do you remember from Tool Time?
Oh, really?
The kid?
Yeah.
I remember. He had like a bowl cut. It was a whole thing in the day, and that's a popular one for girls.
So you like handymen's sons?
I guess, but
okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
Whatever. It's cute.
So.
Okay, so you're in your bunk bed, and you're daydreaming about this handyman's kid. And what ends
I
up
wasn't really daydreaming
know.
about boys at that age yet. I don't remember
You're
being
11,
really
that's true.
serious
Good
about
point,
it yet.
good point. So what
Probably
was
in the
this-
next year, though, I was, you know.
Okay, that
I think I started my period when I was 13, so we're getting the hormones are
I
starting.
feel like that's kind of, about right.
Yeah.
So what happened with, I mean, we can talk about all, but what happened with, I'm curious as to
so this existential
awakening.
crisis, how this all went down, this dark night of the soul, but that lasted a couple weeks. I didn't, a lot of people, my mom told me hers once, which I think is really interesting. I believe it was when Kennedy died and she was young, you know, and she
It was like an end of innocence.
Yes. And it was all on the news and everybody in the family was crying and it was a big catastrophic thing. Yeah. And she realized just how vulnerable humans are, but also that how murderous humans can be too.
Because because at the time, and your mom and I have talked a lot about politics and whatnot, but who didn't like Kennedy?
Right. Okay. Well, she was a little kid. So, I mean, she was a little kid. She had her first one, you know, way earlier than me, actually.
Yeah, okay, good point.
Anywho's, I'm trying to think of like the onset, but there wasn't why I brought up my mom's story because I didn't have like a big news story.
Yeah, it wasn't like okay, got it.
But it was for me, I was laying in bed in my bunk bed one night, and I can't tell you if there was little thoughts that trickled up to this moment, but I just started, I remember having these thoughts about my parents specifically, their death. And the fact that they will one day die, and I hadn't have
gone. Like an awakening, almost, yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't have gone to any funeral of recent or anything. No real good reason for it. Just laying there alone, sometimes in the void, these things come to us.
Yeah, well, you're a thinker too, so maybe that's.
And so I started, you know, this stuff started percolating, and as I thought about my parents' death, that was frightening for a child, especially. It's really scary. You're not autonomous yet. You haven't figured out how to have autonomy. Right. And then I started thinking about, you know, well, if we're going to all die, what is the reason of being here? What is my purpose? And going down, you know, the whole existential rabbit hole of what's the fucking point of humanity? What's the point of being?
And this is 11 years old.
This is at 11 years old. Wow. And I was like, it was like, you know, I had for all the way until 32 or so, a real fear of my mind. And that's really important, I think.
That's I think we need to talk about that.
Yeah, a real fear of my mind, like, I think from that point, and because I had, you know, relatives that had been schizophrenic, or I knew that there were other mental issues that had been in my family. So I'd seen some of these examples, and when you're, especially in an existential questioning rabbit hole, you know, that's taking you down into the depths of the void and into the realization of reality that life is meaningless at the end of the day. It's a very nihilistic journey. Right. And as you're doing that, most people will turn that off with religion, or they'll drown it out some way. They'll find a way to numb that.
And what do you mean by that? It's okay because God will take care of me, or what do you mean by that?
Their faith will allow their faith, or I guess we can say, to cancel out the fear. So I'll put it in someone else's hands, because if I think about this too much, I'm going to implode. Yeah. And that was the feeling. Now, I had a particular upbringing that may have made this a different experience for me, because I have an atheist father, and then I was also raised for a long time in my Catholic grandmother's house, and she was like a strict Catholic. And then I have my mom, who was very resistant to the dogmatic way that she was raised, you know, I should say the guilt-laden and kind of fear-mongering way.
Which kind of makes sense, because your grandmother was this devout Catholic, right?
Correct. Yeah. And so on that side of my family, my mom had this more hippie. She was like a flower child. She used to go along by the name Today. That was her name.
Can I call her that when I see her?
Please. She said she would be dead by 34. Okay. Luckily for me and my existence, she didn't. But anyway, so, you know, I had these very different concepts in my family already. And I'm in my bunk bed in my dad's house. My parents were already divorced by this time. And so I'm there, and I'm having this coming up, and this is, you know, bringing me tears, and I'm just in a bad way, you know. I'm down this rabbit hole, and I don't even know why I exist at this point. Like, what, you know, it's such an identity shaking thing to have a dark night of the soul that way, where you're just like, who am I? Why am I? What is the purpose of all this? How do I make sense of it? And that was the first time I really think I felt my mind feeling like it was a thing that could be too creative and could essentially attack me in a way I couldn't climb out
Now,
of.
did you think that independently, or did you think, I mean, of course independently, but was your influence in thinking that way a result of your understanding that people, in fact, could be mentally ill?
I don't know that I could conceptualize that at the time, but I think subconsciously, you know, I had some sort of intuitive knowing that on one hand, I'm still here and I'm okay. That was not the thing rising to the surface, unfortunately, at the time. And it took me another, like, 20 years to figure that out.
Right.
But I had this other untruth underneath, so I won't call it intuition, but this other feeling of, you know, this creedly feeling that I know that some people in my family have been kind of cast out, because when you call someone crazy, you know, schizophrenic would fit into this category, bipolar, like the term narcissist even. These are exiling words. So when we use them on people, it's really hard for people to come back from that. It's very scary to be told you're that. And so because I had family members who had dealt with that, and my other, you know, people in my life or family members would look at them and say, oh, well, they have this. It's kind of like, you might be a person, but you have this thing going on that makes you like, it's not even, I don't know if it's less than a person, but just someone we have to be careful to interact with.
Right.
And so for my child stuff, again, and I think as probably everybody, my biggest fear, even unconscious at the time, was, of course, abandonment, because, you know, you need people around you for your survival, especially as a young person. And so I was most afraid of going crazy, and that's been always my biggest fear of going crazy, being locked in a loony bin, you know, and I've had a lot of
that's
dreams.
Pretty scary. Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, so because I could see the power of my mind, you know, in this existential crisis. I was really experiencing the power of my mind to suddenly, and it was an awakening, because it was like going from just like, I'm tired because I played all day and, you know, I'm doing all this. And of course, at 11 years old, these are some hormones that are starting to kick into place that start your mind does expand through these hormones. And a part of that expansion for me was all these thoughts kind of coming in at once. And so just to wrap this piece of it up, because we have more we want to probably explore. But as I went down that rabbit hole and started questioning, you know, purpose and life and all this, I couldn't stop crying. My dad came into the room that night. He sat on the bed and and I was in tears, and he said, you know, what's going on? I said, you know, I what is the point of all this? And I told him what I was going through. Like, you know, you and Mom are gonna die. I'm gonna die. Like, this is an emergency to figure out what the hell we're here for, because, you know, if we're gonna die, we better figure this shit out.
Yeah, pronto.
Yeah. And, you know, what's life about? Like, you're old, Dad, you know, you should know these things.
Right, of course.
And Dad knew everything. You know, that's what dads know when you're a young
I know
kid.
everything, right.
And my dad also is very much like an encyclopedia. So you can kind of ask him anything, and even if he fucking doesn't know the answer, he's going to make up some answer that sounds like he pretty much knew the answer, or he'll sort it out while he's just talking for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And so instead of talking to me for 4 hours, which would have felt really soothing in the moment, even though it never would have in other times in my childhood.
But this time, yes.
But this time, that's what I needed to be soothed with. I said, you know, Dad, what is my purpose? Like, what is the purpose of life? And he said, Sadie, I don't know. And it was like the floor, you know, dropped out from under me.
Emergency.
Yeah. Like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, you know everything.
Yeah. Wait, what did I say?
And so for 2 more weeks, and he kind of left me with that, you know, what are you going to, what can you say? And again, he's the atheist, so he didn't have a story of like, well,
Moses did this or whatever, right? Yeah.
Just, you know, put that on, you know, Jesus take the wheel and we'll figure this thing out. Right. It was just, you got to sit with that question, my child. You know? Oh, God. And so I went, I tried to go to school, couldn't keep it together. I couldn't keep it together. And you can't tell your friends because they don't fucking know what the hell you're talking about.
No idea.
They're like, so you don't want to play, or?
Well, whatever. Let's get to work here, right? You know, we have a math test coming up.
Yeah, can I cheat?
We don't need math because, right.
So, exactly, this doesn't matter.
Yeah, so, right.
So, anyway, I for 2 weeks, I could not get my shit together. I went to school intermittently when I could, and I couldn't much. And then I finally, the only thing that got me out of that, and my mom was really worried about me, I remember, but she wasn't going to tell me.
You're talking about today, right?
What?
What was her name? Today?
Today,
Yeah,
yes.
today.
I'm sorry.
We're talking about today.
She wasn't
I
this
know,
day.
but it's still
in time.
today. You're talking about today.
Her name was Today.
My friend Today, I'll
but
text
at
her.
the time, her name was back to what
Her
it
normal
is.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Okay, we will refer to her as Today.
Yeah. So I finally come to this agreement in my head to get me through this. You know, you have to sort through it, and I didn't have much tools, and no one was handing me any. That the only thing I could come up with that would allow me to like just stop being in crisis was that our duty as a species, if we can say, or you know, as any sentient being that has enough consciousness to do it, is to steward ourselves, our species forward, to be part of the progress that answers the questions of why the fuck we're here, or figures out that it is all meaningless or whatever. But we're going to problem solve because that's what we do. We climb mountains and we get to the top and then we climb the next mountain and we figure things out. And so that was the only thing I could come to conclusion on was, okay, my life will be about answering that question about what is my purpose, whatever. So you can see, obviously, that has become my life.
Kind of makes sense.
So that was my first existential crisis. We can move through these crises.
Okay, well,
if you'd like.
there's that one. Okay, this is good. And then so you now are. I'm just going like kind of chronologically, even though I backed up. You're now a professional model. You're out of the mortgage industry. You are, making some money, meeting some people. What kind of like, now can you, if I ask you, do you have siblings? I know you do. Don't, without names, you do have siblings?
I do. Yeah. I grew up with 5 sisters.
5 sisters. So you're one of 6.
That's how I grew up, but I only have one blood sister. The others were step.
Okay, but the other ones are stepsisters. And then they're doing what they're doing, and you still talk to any of them, or depending on what? Yeah, you do. Okay, cool. Because you talk to your mom a lot.
I'm very close with both my parents.
Oh, you are?
I see my mom and dad all the time.
Okay. And then, so now I'm just kind of bringing it forward. You're now in the modeling, you're successful. You're on covers of magazines, you're meeting all these cool people. What, like, is there a reoccurring theme that you've seen just from you receiving it, right? That has been something that stuck out to you with men that were whether you end up in a relationship with or not, forget about that, but that you really felt redeeming about in the world you were in. I mean, was it because it was motocross or in the motorsports world? And I feel like a lot of these people at the pinnacle of their job are very committed to their. Because you were with when you were telling me the names of some of these people, I was just blown away, right?
You're talking about the professional athletes.
The professional athletes. Yeah, well, that or the photographers or, even the people, bodyguard, whatever it was, the men in your world that you were operating in at the time, producers, whoever these people were. Did you have like let me ask you this. Was it generally kind of wholesome, or was it of an era where it was maybe not as happy?
So you're saying in my modeling career,
in your modeling career, in the era in which you were heavily involved in that world, maybe not today.
Professional sports was there a lot of credally things going on?
Yeah, but not just necessarily with any sort of athlete or anything. I'm just talking about just in general. I'm just kind of like trying to pick something where we have grown as a partnership to where the professionalism is there again or there and.
My professionalism, I think
because I kind of know you, and I guess what I'm saying is you made a comment to me. Sorry, I'm being a little vague, and I want to be a little more direct. The comment you made to me, it was a couple of years ago, and you said something like, I wouldn't know the answer to that because I don't put myself in those situations, and I don't go up there. And you're referring to a certain city. And you were saying, I don't go up there, and I don't, and it was kind of more of like an analogy, but you're like, I just don't put myself in those situations because you are very attractive and you were in a field that has a lot of.
I think I can answer your question. I grew up an older sister, and that's always been my archetype. I've taken it with me. I don't think you get to erase that. And I think where you kind of sit on your family tree, indicates a lot of the time how you're going to interact with the world. And because I always have known myself as an older sister, someone who has to be responsible for the others that aren't ready to be responsible yet, they're youngsters or whatever. Throughout my career, I've always been the one who people would describe as responsible or professional and the leader, the mother hen, this type of thing, the older sister vibe, right? And I don't know, I don't even think about it really, right? But it just happens that way. I just end up in that role of the leadership, the mother hen, the one who's going to be, given the schedule to keep everyone in line, whatever it is. And so when it comes to, because I feel like what we're talking about really is professionalism and to like being responsible for
yourself.
Right. Yeah. Not only have I felt like I was always extremely the one who has to be responsible for myself, but I'm responsible for more than just myself. So,
right.
I'm
so
taking
you're used
care.
to that.
I'm,
right.
I have that vibe. I feel like I give off the vibe of, yeah, if you're going to pick one off the flock, don't fuck with her. Like, she's not going to be the one.
That's what I'm getting at. And because the mode.
I'm not the one who's drunk and messy on the bar floor. I'm not the one, I'm not a weak link that you're gonna find to pick off.
You're not overly flirty or flirty at all or anything like that.
And not to say anything bad about those girls who get into that more relaxed state and chaotic state, because I would have loved to, in a lot of ways, I had some jealousy or envy of the fact that they could be so relaxed and just like let go. But I also it isn't natural in my body.
Well, it was and in a way it served you well because it's a good protective mechanism.
100%.
Yeah, good protective. And sometimes protective mechanisms can be overprotective and mess you up. But in your case,
it definitely has been in a lot of ways.
I bet. Yeah.
Because I turn into the fun police because I'm always been the fun police. Like, hey girls, let's like we're done drinking tonight. We have work in the morning. Like let's go back to the
hotel.
Have
you lost friends that way at all? Or
oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But not bad. Like, because I care for them too. They need someone around to make sure their messy ass can get collected and brought back to the hotel without getting raped, or murdered or something. So,
but in fairness to you, I've been to some of these events with these events. That's not an event, but these scenarios with you, and it's still a blast. It's just it's not just so ridiculous that. Like, I don't ever see you. I've never seen a situation.
Yeah, but there has been times I will say that I have been. A
little like,
a youngster where troublesome shit could have happened, but luckily I made it through or whatever. It just, I think luckily whenever those things have happened, like I can count the times that I've blacked out, on probably much less than one hand, but maybe like 2 or 3 times even top of my mind right now. In my entire life, right? Like, obviously, that was a long time ago when I was I was abusing my body.
With it or whatever, right.
I was abusing my liver, and I could wake up and not have such a bad hangover, I guess. Yeah. But even then, it wasn't fun for me. It was scary as fuck. Like, I remember even times when I would, just because we're going down this rabbit hole, right? But I would drink or something like that, and I would feel a little bit out of control where I can't walk exactly right.
Did you know that was happening? Like, would you self-regulate?
And then I would... Yeah.
Wow. Okay. But
like I said, there's maybe 3 times where I was in too much sunshine all day or something else where I didn't calculate for that.
We're sick and you didn't know it. No, that's good. I mean, and so as part of that, right? We talked about this, but as part of that, your personality, this highly professional, intelligent person, but you also found attractive in guys a similar, I'm not really saying, but did you find attractive in other guys that similar attribute, or does opposites attract? And you were dealing with like the kind of the party boys and the...
No, like never did I really want to be with the party boy, but... Right. When I was more okay being in that realm myself, then I attracted like attracts like, I think, or that's how my experience has been. So for the most part, it's been people who, and maybe it's not even that they weren't someone who wants to party, but it was that I wasn't really interested in doing that. And when your partner's always like shit face or something, it's just gross.
It's kind of weird. Yeah, so you're not in that position. Yeah. Okay, so because we're kind of running lean on top, but I'm really happy to have this discussion. And I know some people, we know you. Can we talk about, without naming, there was something I remember where you said something like, and if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, I probably should have asked you beforehand, but you wouldn't pose like naked, or there was something where you were like, ain't happening or something. Is that something that you kind of maintained or?
I never, so when I was younger,
right?
Yeah, when I was starting in my modeling career, it's kind of hilarious to go through my journey. If you ever not you, but just generally when I look back on the pictures of my, my modeling resume or whatever, when I first started in the world of modeling, it was, remember I have all this Catholic shame that I've carried with me, especially about showing my skin. Anytime like I had a skirt that was above my knee, like anything showing, my grandma would come and slap me when whatever skin was showing and call me cochina, which means dirty girl, So I was like, okay, you're not allowed to like show your body. Of course, so what did I do with my life? I used my
we'll see, Grandma.
body.
We'll see.
Which, by the way, I love my grandma. She was, a second mother to me, essentially.
But that makes sense.
I feel I'm actually doing, the work I'm doing now is healing a generational wound that she was just passing down that needed to be healed. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But I started out in modeling with that shame and fear. And so I was a little more careful. I was like, well, you wear a bikini to the beach, so I guess you can be in that and model. But then, but I don't want to turn around because something about like my butt, like the backside of me and my butt is too
risque.
It's something is too forward. I don't know what the thought was exactly.
Yeah, in a photo maybe, right.
Whatever my thought process was, I don't know, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense now. And so as I progressed, then that changed and I felt okay with that. And I was kind of uncovering, not consciously, but uncovering these layers of like guilt and shame. And eventually I did actual real conscious work. I started therapy and I specifically brought shame, like sexual shame, the shame of my sexuality, of being objectified, these type of things, into my room, in the therapist room, and then into my dreams when I would dream journal. And it came through in so many different modalities that as I began working on myself and doing my inner work, I was able to really peel back the onion when it came to my own personal sexual shame, and it allowed me to feel comfortable in my body. I still to this day, though, I have an OnlyFans, so that's where all my sexy content lives.
Okay.
But I still hold back some things, like...
What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't actually, it's weird because I have no shame about those things. Like sometimes there'll be a slip or something and I'm like, oh, fucking well. Like if it happens and someone calls it out, I'm like,
because they're going
what are you going to do?
Right.
Of course. And I missed it, whatever, if something I didn't even want shown. But at the same time, I don't give these bodies we're born into, they're natural. It's so crazy that culture has made up a story around why we can't show them. And I think there's so much about what we're trying to traverse, even on this show, but generally as humans in life, we're trying to traverse beyond just this primal mechanism, this sex-driven mechanism that's about procreation, because that is a beautiful and important way that we progress the species forward. We solve the issue for my 11-year-old existential crisis self. But what would be even further, progression would be being able to hold the fact that we are these sexual beings, that we're having a subjective experience, that when we feel objectified by someone, we need to check that, because really what someone else is doing with the image of us on, social media, or what they think about us from a distance, has absolutely nothing to do with us and only everything to do with the person who's deciding to objectify. And that, uncovering that, has been such an important journey. I don't think we get to do that when we're so shrouded in sexual shame and shame around our physical bodies, especially, because we can't even feel comfortable being in our body at that point.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I know, and as we kind of like start to wrap up, I know, obviously know you, but I have noticed with some women I know, the older they get. And I'm not talking like when they're in their 60s. I'm just saying as they get older, out of their 20s into their 30s, they start to do what you're saying. Not all of them, but some of them. And I'm kind of like alluding to this to the guys, but they start really not giving a fuck. And they're like, whatever. Like if my dress is too short, like, okay. Or if like my shirt, my whatever's cut too low, it's like, so what?
I know.
And it's really sexy because it's like, not because of what they're doing.
Well,
it's sexy because they're just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's
it's not what it's. I want to always make sure because we always fucking care, right? Like DGAF is bullshit.
Okay.
Not giving a fuck is not true for human beings. It's just not.
But that's a good term, right?
Yeah, and when it comes to something like that, like as we age as women, we start not giving so much of a fuck, or that's what it seems like, or we start being more confident.
Yeah, what
in
is
our
that?
bodies.
I guess is what I'm asking. What is that?
Yeah, I think it's really that we have cared for so long, and we've allowed it to like manipulate our lives and puppeteer us because we've been wanting to chameleon and mold ourselves to what the world wants to accept and what's okay and what's correct, politically correct. And, oh, don't show this much skin because people are going to think this and da-da-da. Or you're going to get objectified, or you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation. Or if you wear that, you're giving him the wrong idea. And
which, knowing you, we know that wouldn't happen, but right.
Well, he might get an idea, but... Oh,
yeah, I mean, you're putting yourself in the wrong position.
If I believe that his idea means something about me, I've given my power away. If I put out whatever fucking idea by wearing this outfit and he comes at me with whatever he thinks that's going to mean, I have the power to correct whatever his misconception is, right? As soon as I believe that him believing something about me makes it true, I have no more power. I've given it to
you
him.
haven't corrected it.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay, so thank you for sharing that with us because a lot of this I didn't even know, and I've known you for some time. So, but it sounds like overall is that you clearly did your work. Clearly, you identified, at a very young age, you did your work, you sought help when necessary, and then you learned to do your own work.
I didn't do my work until I was over 30. So,
oh, really? Yeah. Okay. And well, let me ask you this. Where do you see yourself, where do you see yourself in 5 years and maybe in 10 years? Not necessarily where do you want to be, but where, and it might be the same thing, but where do you, and then we'll wrap maybe up with this question, and where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
I see we're talking about like on what
whatever
level,
either social media platform and a success either in the body or in the mind or whatever it might be like.
I see myself as a highly orgasmic woman, which is what I'll call it, where I'm experiencing pleasure and blissful states through more of my life than I do now because it's a journey that I'm on. And that's also part of that unfolding and releasing shame and getting back into the body instead of living in the mind and living by the concepts that other people are putting on you. So being more embodied is, I guess, the easier way to say that. And as far as like on what I want to be doing in the world that I believe is secondary to what I just said, also helping do what my 11-year-old self needs me to do.
Oh, okay.
Because being embodied is one of the main things that I've learned is actually what living on purpose and being in your purpose and figuring out purpose is all about. And we have a whole episode on that.
Right.
So besides doing that and continuing the work I do on that, besides the self-mastery work that all includes, I want to release this book that I'm writing currently. I want to continue.
Do we have a name for it yet? Do we know it?
We're flirting with the name, but I'm pretty sure
that's the problem.
I want to get your opinion though on it.
Because I have a name, and then the editor's like, "That's not a good name. Let's do another name."
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
we don't know. We don't know where it's going to go from here,
title,
but yeah, exactly.
We'll talk about that name.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to release that book. One of the major things I want to work towards is building a compound, essentially. But what I want to do on it is I want it to act as essentially a retreat school for adults to figure out their own philosophy and uncover their purpose and direction and the type of things that we talk about on this show.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, where I can hire essentially the types of people who can come in and really give that guidance like I got that have brought me to now. Because I feel like when I look back on my younger self, myself before I started doing the work, she was in so much suffering, that she wasn't even necessarily always conscious of. She definitely was feeling it, but not, I just want to be able to gift this to the world because I believe that the existential questioning self, the 11-year-old self, this is where I help to answer that question for our species as much as I can see right now.
And the cool thing about that is you can take that mission and it can go throughout the rest of your life, and you can manage
and it'll probably grow and change and evolve to whatever it looks like.
But you can do it when you're older and older, and it gets more and more beautiful. And when you get older, and then you know more, and you get more experience, things working. That's what's fun about things like that.
Let me ask you about the book title. So I think because we should
vote. But go ahead.
Sure. I think it's going to be called Big Dick Energy. And we know this from our previous season.
And it's D.I.K.
Right. It's an acronym, DICK, Direction, Integrity. This is going to be conscious thinking now, and then the K will be kink, which will be about sexual energy and twisting your concepts of the world kind of on their heads in order to be turned on by the things that normally turn you off, so you can figure out why the fuck you keep interacting with them.
Right.
It's a fun little.
So Big Dick Energy is, but it's the same book though. Same book, just different titles. We're just looking for a title.
The working title is Big Dick Energy.
Okay. Wow.
What is your thought?
That's pretty provocative.
It's provocative, and I hope it doesn't go.
But it makes
people close to it because they're like,
hey, that means
it's too sexual.
I'm going to look and see if there are dicks in here. Oh, there's no dicks. Okay, I'm not going to buy it.
Yeah.
No, I do that.
Well, it's written largely for men, so I don't think they're looking for dicks in it.
Exactly. No, exactly.
But it is going to be a concept that anyone can really use. Obviously,
I would buy that, and I would not only would I buy it, I would read it.
Good. That's amazing because you don't seem to read anything.
I really don't. I'm bad. Yeah, I'm too busy doing stuff. But I do believe, and this is one of I will say this, and this is a fault that I have or whatever it is, but you read a lot in your podcasts and audiobooks and read, and you always tell me, hey, look at this, look at that. Just because of what I do in my daily life, I'm unfortunately I read so much crap in my daily life that I have to, like, the last thing I want to do when I get home is like pull out a book and read again. So I'm just like, you know what I mean? And then I write, we've written and stuff. I got my books over here somewhere, but I'm not going to show you the title because I don't want you to just worry about that later. But anyway, that's it. I thank you so much, but I really do mean this because I know that a lot of this I didn't know. And I think a lot of people, this is kind of a little bit of a refresh, we're still delivering the same message, but I think it's worth. I just think people want to know you. I mean, after all, you have so many followers. I don't even know this many millions of people.
You don't know those people?
I don't know those people, and they're following you. So yeah, I only know like 8 people, and a couple of them are in this studio right now. So I live a very sad life. But having said that,
that's really not true. You know a lot of people.
We really do. Yeah, but your followers, I have looked at some of the comments, and there's some of them are
fabulous.
So good.
So
yeah,
fabulous.
You do have some good and it's surprisingly refreshing to me to see.
And you know why? And this will be like a little thing we can leave on.
Let's leave on that.
Because, of course, you've said so much already about the love that we have, even because now that you're, tied to me in this way with the show, you get to have some of that love that they give, right? Through my platform, which is beautiful that they shine so much light just by stopping by and making a thoughtful comment.
Nice.
And
it really
how
is.
amazing that you can touch people like that through social media. I think that's pretty cool.
And I will go through on my limited account and I'll read some of the comments and I'm like, wow, that's just so nice.
Like they took the time.
Yeah.
So, so the thing I want to say, though, is that one thing I have been very dedicated to for at least a decade, but I don't know when exactly it started. So, is focusing on what I'm going to call it like the true follower, like the people that you can see when you read through my comments, the people who are really like invested in the message.
What do you call those? What would you call them? Okay,
I call them true followers.
True followers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anytime I'm trying to figure out like where I'm going to spend my energy, there's always a percentage of that energy that I'm going to put towards the people who are investing into me because we've talked about.
Yes, because you're responding. I mean, you're doing this stuff. Yeah.
And because I believe in mutually invested and beneficial, but mutually invested relationships. So when someone's investing into me to that degree, then I want them to also be, I want to invest into them. Plus, this is part of my, calling or purpose. I've found a way to kind of alchemize all these weird facets of myself, like my sexuality, the ability, the skill, I guess, of not holding on to shame or that objectification shame or any of those things that come. I've done this work to shed these layers, so it allows me to stand in this really particular, and I'll call it unique limelight, where I'm willing to kind of stand in the fire and see if people want to burn me at the stake for talking about the things I talk about while wearing sexy attire, being in a bikini or lingerie or whatever it is, and talking about, philosophy or doing your inner work or things that people are like, I don't know if I can take you seriously. And it's like, well, you stopped on this page, so can you use me as the bridge, And I'm so willing to be used as that. And I think it's really important as humans we figure out what we want to be used for. So for my followers who do that beautiful, dedicated, and energetic work of stopping by and speaking beauty on my page through the comment section, I want to say thank you for letting me use you for your ability to speak beauty into people, into me specifically. And I hope you feeling used by me by me using you in that way is actually delicious. And you can see how we can have that kind of mutually invested exchange. Okay, so Chap, anything else?
Because no, that you did it. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Beautiful. And because this dovetails into comment, subscribe, you know?
Yeah. So with that, keep doing what you're doing.
keep it up.
Yeah, keep sending us the lovely, lovely comments. And of course, you can click through all the links below to connect with us in any of the platforms you want to. Literally, we're on all of them at this point. And please share this with someone who you think might want to know all about me, all the ins and outs of this weird little alien.
Little weirdo over here.
Yeah.
What's your alien name again? Let's end on that.
It was what I named. We decided it was what I named a plant when I was in 5th grade, and it was like. By the way, I spelled it with an X. I remembered.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember that.
One of the
night.
few. Okay.
I spelled it with an X, but of course pronounced like a Z.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was like Zerania, something like that.
So Zerania.
We're gonna go with that.
What do we say to the fans, Zerania?
We say what we always say. We want to remind you that you already are.